Well, I think most people in the Labour Party think there are both advantages but some disadvantages for our being members of the European Union on the present terms, and that we now have, in my view, an opportunity to address the disadvantages and to produce a long-term outcome which is much more satisfactory, and I think we ought to grab that opportunity. I think the cost of the EU is very high, and it'd be much better for Britain if it was lower. I think that there are problems about having one-size-fits-all legislation produced in Brussels. I think it would be better if a lot of social legislation was originated in Westminster instead. I think there are big problems around immigration, which are very difficult to tackle within the existing EU framework. And I think there's a big problem in that we're not in the euro, whereas everybody else is. I think it's right that we're not in the euro, but there are going to have to be big institutional changes to make the eurozone work, from which we're going to have to be excluded. We're not a part of those. And I think that defining that relationship between Britain and the rest of the EU in these circumstances is going to be quite tricky and involve some tough negotiation, which really at the moment the Labour Party isn't instigating. I think that at the moment the Labour Party, or a large part of it, is just in favour of staying in whatever the outcome of the current negotiations. Now, Labour does have a record of saying they'd like reform of the European Union, but at the moment there's no definition of what those reforms should be and no campaign to get them in place. And that seems to me to be a big mistake, both because I think it would be the right thing to do to try and get these reforms in place, but secondly because I think that's what a large section of the electorate would like to see the Labour Party doing. But if I was advising David Cameron, I would say that I think there's a really big opportunity at the moment to redefine our relationship with the European Union, because something substantial is going to have to be done to deal with a situation where most of the countries in Europe are moving ahead to form something like the United States of Europe to make the Eurozone work, whereas we're not in the Euro. And I think this provides an opportunity to redefine where we are in terms of the single market, to make sure that we continue with free trade with Europe, but to do this potentially outside the single market with all the implications this has for the way the British economy is run. I think that we could forge a looser but much more productive relationship with other countries in Europe if it was possible to proceed along these lines. And I think it's worth at least David Cameron trying to get that sort of relationship in place. I do think there is a problem of polarisation, of some people saying that the European Union is something we ought to be a part of whatever happens, and other people take the opposite stance. It seems to me to be more sensible to wait and see what the outcome of the current renegotiation is, and then to take a view one way or another as to whether the changes are sufficient for us to vote yes for staying in or no for coming out.